Right, we're just nearly there. We're right on the note of 5 o'clock here in Ireland. So, as I said earlier, it is good evening, good morning, and good afternoon, depending on where you are. I'd like to first of all apologise to anyone who joined us last week, where we had some pretty major technical issues and we couldn't actually present the presentation. So, apologies for that, and thank you for joining us again. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, welcome, and I hope you enjoy it. And Martha has put together, Martha, our marketing director, has put together a great presentation, which is really talking about the Camino from medieval times right up to today, because it is St. James's Day on Saturday, the 25th of July, and obviously St. James is why a lot of why the pilgrimage started. But we'll get into it straight away. So, Martha, please, next slide. Okay, so very quickly at CaminoWays, what we do is we are a tour operator that manages all the tours on the Camino de Santiago. We're based in Ireland with staff in Ireland, Spain, Portugal, and Italy. And what we do is we offer walking and cycling holidays on the Camino de Santiago and the Via Francigena in Italy. We within that, so we offer the accommodation, which is in hotels only. So you'll always be in a private ensuite room of your choice, whether that's a twin or a twin, single, double room. And while you walk, we offer luggage transfer. So we pick up your bags and bring them to the next hotel. Sorry, my video was turned off. I'll just turn it back on. And then we can also add on things like airport transfers and other services like day tours at the end or start of your walk. We work mostly with self-guided people walking the Camino. That means you can chat to us, log into our website, design and tailor your own tour, where you want to start, where you want to finish, what date you want to walk. And also then with group tours, we work with group tours of all types, shapes and sizes, and that can be guided or self-guided as well. While you walk, we offer a 24-hour assistance number. That means if you have any issues or you need some help, you can call us 24 hours a day. And of course, we have our very extensive online tour planner, which gives you all the information you need to walk the Camino. Next slide, please. So, really, the history of the Camino, we are into July, which is St. James's Day about to be celebrated. And the Camino really goes back thousands of years. And it is essentially there were three big pilgrimages following kind of the death of Christ, I suppose. And Jerusalem would have been the first one, Crusades, things like that. People trying to reclaim the land of Jerusalem from the locals, essentially. And obviously then pilgrimages to Rome, which is many of them, but the Via Francigena being the main one. And of course, to Santiago de Compostela to the tune of St. James. Really, the Santiago de Compostela is definitely one of the oldest and traditional pilgrimages. And why? Because people want St. James, who was an apostle of Christ, is believed to be buried in the tomb and surrounding that is the cathedral. One of the things that have always built up along the way is lots of services, hotels, albergues, or hostels. And while you walk the Camino, of course, you get your pilgrim passport stamped, and that proves that you have walked the Camino. And when you get to Santiago de Compostela, you can then hand that in and get your certificate of completion. Next slide, please. Okay. So we just lost presentation for a second, but that's fine. I'll keep talking. So really, St. James. St. James was one of the apostles of Jesus. So during the Last Supper, Jesus instructed all his disciples to head off to Europe and spread the word of the gospel throughout all the people in Europe and the known world, as far as India, up to Northern Europe, and also, as St. James did, he was sent off to Western Europe. Essentially, he based himself in northern Spain, that area of northwest Spain, and Finisterre. And Finisterre, going way back to, I suppose, even prehistoric times, was a place that people saw was Land's End because they looked to the west and the sun went down over the sea, and they didn't think there was anything else after that. So that became a very significant part of the world. a very well-known part of the world. People would have traveled there for births, deaths, marriages, whatever that may be. So I think it is believed that St. James could base himself there and spread the word. But he did travel around as well. Some would believe he travelled kind of around the coastlines, even up to France and south there to Portugal, but definitely travelled around a fair bit, spreading the gospel. He returned back to Jerusalem in 44 AD, and of course Pontius Pilate got his hands on him, and he was beheaded, unfortunately. And the legend has it that his supporters brought him back to Western Spain by boat, and that's where he sailed up the estuary, and we'll talk about that a little bit later as well, and carried inland and buried. And then around 9th century, a shepherd discovered a grave full of relics. He got the local priest down and got the local bishop, and they all decided that this was St. James, and then it's built up from there. And of course, we ended up with the cathedral, and then everybody coming to the cathedral to you can kiss the head of St. James, and then you're absolved of all your sins, and that is where it all started, I suppose. If you go on to the next slide, please. Yeah, and during that kind of golden age, and around the 11th, 12th century, many, I suppose, noblemen, knights, even normal people walked the Camino to the tomb of St. James. Some of the first guidebooks were written as well by the monks who walked there. And that started creating the legend and I suppose the information for people to actually come back and walk these routes. And these routes developed into trading routes, into general pathways. But the main route to Santiago, which coming from France, being the French way, known as the French way now, became one of the main highways, and people were walking this all the time. And obviously, with the aim to get to Santiago de Compostela to the cathedral. And moving on, please. I suppose later during the 16th, 19th century, there was, I suppose, a lot of wars, plagues. There's the Reformation. There's a lot of activity going on, and people were afraid to leave their homes essentially. And I suppose it fell into legend as such. And really, it was much later on. I mean, we moved right up to modern times around 1985. While there would have been always people walking the Camino, it was a very, very few. As you can see, in 1985, 1,200 pilgrims received the Compostela. If you look at 2020, that's 1985. If you look at 2025, 530,000 people received it. So obviously, there's a huge amount of growth there. And what drove that growth really was in kind of around the early 90s, it was declared as a World Heritage Site, which always brings a lot of a big magnifying glass onto destinations and a lot of kudos. And then we had things like the Paul Coelho's book called The Pilgrimage, which was a massive global readership. And then, of course, in 2010, we had the Hollywood movie The Way with Martin Sheen walking the Camino, a fantastic movie. If you haven't seen it, I definitely recommend it. It'll definitely give you the inspiration to walk the Camino. And we have many, many people who still ring us today and say, "Oh, I've just looked at The Way and I want to walk the Camino." And that was a great, I suppose, instigator for people, but also opening it up to people who've maybe never heard of it, maybe understood it but didn't know what it was, and the movie and the books and everything else gave them that understanding. And moving on there, please. I talked earlier about the legend that St. James was brought up the estuary to Padron and then carried inland. And one of the main routes, I think one of the most significant routes that you can walk the Camino is the spiritual way on the Portuguese way. And there's three Portuguese ways, essentially: the coastal way, the central way, which would be probably a little bit more known. But from the coastal way, you could always take what's known as the spiritual variant, which essentially means you stay on the coast a little bit longer. And on your second to last walking day, you actually take a boat up the estuary and you actually follow then the journey that St. James's body would have taken. And I think that's a really significant thing and very special thing to do. So if you've done the Camino before and you're looking for something a little bit different but very traditional and spiritual, this is a fantastic route to do. You also get the culture of the coastline as well and everything that goes with it, and the huge advantage of having one day on the boat. There's still a couple of kilometres to walk at the start and at the end of that, but very, very little. And it's a real treat, that route. And always, if you're looking to do something a bit different, we are here to help advise and guide you along the way. Moving on. And we have a map now, really, of where everything lies, and you can see just that's highlighted the spiritual way, where essentially keep left of the Portuguese coastal way, and then you get the boat along the estuary up and walk to Padron, and then the next day you finish into Santiago de Compostela. That's really special, and something that you should do if you're looking for something different for the Camino, but still good for a first time Camino as well. Next slide. The cathedral is fascinating, whether you're religious or not. I mean, you can walk in there and just spend hours. And after walking the Camino for 7, 10, 15, 30 days, it's a real piece of peace where you can sit, watch the world go by, just take in everything. And it is an unbelievable place. And yeah, it did take hundreds of years to build. Began construction in 1075 and finished in 1122. And as I said earlier, it has been built over the tomb of St. James. You can look at the photo there, and you can see the massive altar at the back and the statue of St. James standing there. And you actually walk underneath that and to see the tomb. But before you walk in underneath it, you can walk behind the statue and you can give that statue a hug. And it is quite a special thing. Architecturally, it's definitely one of the finest examples of any cathedral in Europe. And it's got some big rivals out there, but this really stands up to it. It's massive as well. It's got little side chapels that you can explore, sit in quietly, and spend some time there. There's a great tradition with the Buntifumario. So the Buntifumario is this giant incense burner. You can just see it in front of the altar, there, above the altar, and the silver incense burner. And it's an incredible ceremony that's so medieval. And during, not all the ceremonies, but generally during the busy period, they'll do it at least once a day, usually at the evening mass. About 8 monks will come out and they'll pick up the ropes and they'll obviously light the incense burner and they'll swing it through the cathedral. And it is a sight to behold because it does go about 60 kilometers an hour straight in front of the priest who's giving the sermon. And it is an incredible sight. Lots of people will say, why did I do this? Where did it come from? And the truthful story is that going back to the medieval days when people did the pilgrimage to Santiago de Compostela, part of the tradition was you do it in the clothes you start in. So when people arrived at the cathedral, they were a little bit smelly, and they all came into the cathedral, which made a bit of a pong. So the monks came up with an idea to make this giant incense burner that they could swing through the cathedral and hopefully mask the smell of all the pilgrims that arrived. So I think that's quite amusing and very practical for something that doesn't look practical at all. And then, next year is 2027, and it is a very important year of the on the Camino in the cathedral. And they do something they only do 14 times a century, which is they open what's known as the Holy Door at the back of the cathedral. And legend would have it is if you walk through that door, which you can only do 14 times a century, you will be completely absolved of all your sins and have a key directly into heaven. So it does increase the amount of people walking the Camino, puts a bit of pressure accommodation. So if you are planning to walk in 2027, our advice is to get planning now, get booking now. We're already doing that. We're already securing the hotels for people on the Camino for 2027. So it's an important time. Next slide, please. So yes, and moving up to today very quickly, I did mention that back in the early 80s, there was about 1,000 people recorded or got the Compostela. And very quickly, moving 40 odd years up to 2025, we know that 530,000 people have received the Compostela. And we're looking at more people this year again. We know that already. And that's incredible, the amount of growth. And people sometimes say that it's very busy, it's too many people walking the Camino now. And while that might be true when you come into some of the towns close to Santiago in the evening, you never really notice it on the routes because there's so many and they're vast. And when you're hiking, you're going the same direction. So it doesn't really happen. September, definitely the busiest months for people walking. May, second busiest month. So if you if you want less crowded or less atmosphere, you can avoid those months. But the Camino is great to walk anytime from essentially March right up to the end of October. Pilgrims come from all over the world now. Over 190 countries, come of all sizes, shapes, all religions, all welcome on the Camino. And it's about a 50-50 split between men and women, a little bit more women. We know that most people still do it by foot, but with the growth and popularity of things like cycling and e-biking, there is a little bit of growth in people cycling the Camino, which is perfectly viable to do as well. There's no problem with that. You can cycle most routes of the Camino. Definitely the most popular route on the Camino is the French way. And it's what most people know. It has the most services on it, and it's what most people do. But that's followed very closely by the Portuguese Central Way, then the Portuguese Coastal Way, and then we have other routes like the Northern Way and the English Way, which are also growing in popularity. As you can see
The
there,
email is called
the
Breaking News
USA's
with Gab.
huge numbers of people walking from the US, growth markets from South Korea, Australia, huge numbers of people per head of capita coming from the UK and Ireland as well. Of course, it's very popular with the Irish, and will continue to be so. So thank you, Martha. And St. James's Day is essentially celebrating St. James on July the 25th. It'll be a Saturday this year. An amazing time to be in Santiago de Compostela. There's throughout the week, the weekend and the week after, there's all sorts of little free concerts, lots of things going on in the big square outside the cathedral and within the cathedral itself. And of course, there's a massive big fireworks display behind the cathedral, which is extremely impressive. So if you're thinking of walking next year, obviously might be a bit late for walking now because obviously it's on Saturday. But if you're planning to walk in around St. James's Day next year, again, plan now, get your booking in now. We'll look after you. Okay, thank you. And we know that we talked about lots of people coming from different countries, different religions. But because you can pick through the questionnaire when you're getting your Compostela, we know some little bit about who's walking the Camino now, and we know that 46% of people walk it for religious reasons or spiritual connections. 33% are probably for more personal reasons, and at 21% actually put down non-religious reasons. So the religious reasons are still well up there, and whether you're religious or not, it's very hard not to, I suppose, get a little bit steeped in it because just of so many little churches, stunning little churches, all the relics along the way, and obviously finishing with the cathedral. So I think if you're not religious, it's something that you can look in from the outside and respect it and enjoy it as well. And then if you are religious, obviously this is just going to be mind blowing for you. Okay, and next slide, please. I think now we're. So the Holy Year in 2027 for next year, it falls on a Sunday. Obviously, this year it's on the Saturday, and as I said, it only happens 14 times a century. So it's you're not going to get many opportunities to go on it. So next year is a Holy Year 27, and then the years after that, 2032, 38, and 49. So I think for myself, if I was going to go, I'd definitely be trying to go next year. The Holy Door also opens December 31st, 2026, and then it is open for the whole year of 27. So you don't have to be there during St. James' Day celebration to experience the Holy Door. It is open throughout the year of 2027. And I suppose, it's as I said, get your booking in early, get going with your planning, tell us what you want to do. You can go onto our website at CaminoWays.com and plan your own Camino, or you can get in touch with us on phone, on email, or on web chat, and we'll help you design your Camino. And just a quick timeline on the Camino. I suppose 44 AD is 44 after Christ's death. St. James was martyred in Jerusalem, and then a couple of hundred years later, at 830 AD, the tomb was discovered by the shepherd. And very quickly, in those days after that, around 899, the cathedral was built over the tomb and developed right up into into 1122 when it was completed. The first pilgrims started writing about walking the Camino in the first guidebooks, the lonely planets of the day, if you like, around 1130. And then it kind of fell into the background a bit, but it was always there. And around 1985, as I said, it really came back into the spotlight, especially when it became a UNESCO heritage site in 93. And then we are moving into here today where we're looking at 2027 to be a record year of people walking the Camino, and still much more space and room for everybody in on the Camino. So next slide, please. And here's an overall map of everywhere you can go. And we mentioned that the most popular way is the French way, and that links up from France on a route called the Camino Le Puy. So it's a stunning route that you can walk. It's not as developed as, I say, the Camino, so it's a little bit more challenging, but really stunning. And that comes into Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port, which is just on the French side of the Pyrenees. And you cross the Pyrenees in one day to a place called Roncesvalles into Spain. And then you can continue on for about another 35 to 40 days, depending on your walking level, through that area of northern Spain. Stunning cities like Pamplona, Burgos, Leon, along the Meseta through Logroño and the Roca area, coming into Sarria, and then finishing from Sarria 100 kilometers into Santiago. And that Sarria and Santiago is the most walked of all those routes. So it's really stunning. And on the map, you can see the Portuguese way coming up from Lisbon, so well south in Portugal. But really from Porto is where it's mostly walked. So Porto, about 100 kilometers south of the Spanish border. And you can either go coastal or central, so a little bit inland or on the coast, all the way for 2 weeks into Santiago de Compostela. And of course, as I discussed, there was the Espiritu variant within that as well. So that's a really stunning route. Other routes are the Norte, that'll be the next most popular. So that's coming along the coast of northern Spain. So taking in stunning scenery, coastline, and amazing cities like Bilbao, Santander, San Sebastian. And then eventually it cuts down into Santiago, where you finish there. And we have the short but very challenging Camino Inglés, or the English way. So people back in the day from Ireland, England, used to sail down to the coast and then walk just over 100 kilometers from Ferrol down into Santiago. And of course, what is fantastic to come back and do if you've completed the Camino into Santiago, or if you wish to continue, is walking out to the coast and finish there. And it's really stunning, very rural, very traditional, walking out to Finisterre, which is translated Land's End. And that's where I discussed the fact that people used to walk or used to use that area for births, deaths, marriages, due to the fact that they thought that's where the land ended. So again, it's very, very traditional. Other routes like the Inverno or the Plata, which we only do from Orense, really stunning part of Spain, coming up from the south. Amazing walking through big valleys, lots of wine, vineyards. So again, if you're looking for something different, these are great routes to do. And of course, we do the Camino to Rome, which is the Via Francigena, and we do that from Lucca, and Lucca's gateway to Tuscany, walking through Tuscany into Siena, out the other side, down into Vertibo, and then finishing in Rome. And all these routes can be broken down into daily, weekly, monthly itineraries. So you can pick and choose, as I said, where you want to finish, where you want to start, where you want to finish, and the date you want to walk. And that's all available on our website. Or if you have a chat with us, you can arrange a phone chat, video chat, or by email. No problem whatsoever. So that's it, really. I hope that gives you some sort of insight into the history of the Camino and what's going on with it today. It's a little bit different than what we normally do, but being St. James's Day, we do like to add this in just to give, I suppose, a little bit of context of where the Camino is coming from and the huge tradition it is. I know we've had a couple of people asking questions, so I'm going to bring Martha back in now, and she can ask me the questions, and I'll hopefully be able to answer them.
Thank you, Jeremy. So if anyone has any questions, you can drop it on the chat now and we go through them. I was replying on the chat that if someone wants the slides that Jeremy has been presenting, you can drop me your email and I will email them to you tomorrow. Otherwise, the recording of the webinar will be available tomorrow morning Irish time.
Okay, very good. Do we not have any questions today?
No questions so far.
Okay, brilliant. So we can end the webinar there then. Again, apologies for people who who joined us last week, but I hope you enjoyed the webinar today. As I said, it's a little bit of a different subject, but I think it's a great subject just to look at the history. And we'll be presenting our next webinar towards the end of next month. And that will be generally about preparation for walking the Camino in September, because that's when most people do it. All right. Well, thank you. Have a good day and hope to see you on the Camino soon.
Thank you so much.